Welcome to Fasciano Productions. My name is Bobby Fasciano, and you're watching a far too thorough Bloomburrow frog review. That's right, today we're talking about Magic the Gathering's newest set, Bloomburrow, and all of the woodland creatures and little warriors you can find in it. Taking a look at the frogs. Now, frogs hold a special place in my heart. I have been the owner of a Lonus Cryptozoologist frog deck for many a year. I believe I pioneered the archetype, which now is a staple of many formats, I'm sure, and is about to get a lot more pieces. So I thought, who else to talk about frogs and the frogs of Bloomburrow than me, your resident frog expert? Now, why exactly am I a frog expert? Well, not only do I have this encyclopedic knowledge of all these fantastic frogs, not only do I have this wonderful deck, I've played a frog before. You can watch the Siege of Burrvale, episode 1 out now, episode 2, 3, and 4 coming soon over on Endwell Tales. I have this understanding of frogs. I have an understanding of what makes frogs, not only in the world, but in Magic the Gathering. So I wanted to point out some things before we get started with our review proper. Today we'll be going through every single Bloomburrow frog card, whether it has a frog in the artwork, whether it is a frog itself. We will be talking about it, whether it's in the commander decks, whether it's in the main set, even if it's a special guest. We have an all-encompassing frog review, and we hope you'll stick with us here. But first, let's talk about what makes a frog in Magic the Gathering. Now, I think there's a few things, as we can see with cards like Chubtoad, the Gitrog monster, Grolnok. Frogs often eat people, leaving just an arm hanging out of the mouth. That's a very important frog thing that we'll be looking for today. Frogs also, I think the most famous, most powerful frog is probably Spore frog. I'm going to be joking and ironic a lot in this video. This, I don't think, is a joke. It's just fog on a frog. Fog on a body is not only repeatable, it is an on-board threat, and makes people really not want to attack into you. It's good for political deals. It's just kind of fantastic all around. It is probably the best frog in Magic the Gathering, and my favorite frog in Magic the Gathering. There are two frogs with Threshold, a new red Bark Ripper, and also, I believe, a card from Modern Horizons 2, the name of which is slipping me now, but another Anurid. Anurids are frog beasts. The old cards were just labeled as beasts and have varying art styles, but have now kind of settled on the Anurids that you see in modern times, if we see them at all. None in Bloomburrow, unfortunately. This does lead to the first mistake that Bloomburrow makes, as Threshold has been moved to a rat mechanic, not a frog mechanic. This is kind of a big deal for all the Threshold frog players out there. That deck in Modern was about to pop off, and really needed a few more Threshold frog cards to see that support. Unfortunately, we don't get it, but hey, you can still run a new red Bark Ripper in your commander decks if you so wish. We have frogs in every color. Frogmere Enforcer, Modern Horizons 3, is the first red frog, but we've had white frogs, we've had multicolored frogs, we've had black, red, blue, etc., etc. Now, the biggest note that I would say about the history of frogs and how it ties into Bloomburrow is Species Gorger. This is a card from Dragon's Maze, which was my second set I ever played. It reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. It's a 5-mana 6/6, and this seems to be the inspiration for a lot of the frogs mechanics in this set. We've heard designers talking about making frogs seem like they're hopping, they're moving in and out of the battlefield, they're triggering activated abilities, triggered abilities, rather, from entering the battlefield, as it used to be called. So we're going to take a look at all of that today, and let's start with our first frog card, Mabel's Medal. This is an instant. It's 2 mana. One creature gets +2/+2. Another creature gets +1/+1. Now you'll see I have a grading scale for all of these cards. If it's an A, that means it's incredible for frogginess and playability. B is good, but it's either a little underwhelming power-wise, or it didn't understand the quote-unquote assignment, as they say. C is, at least it's a frog. At least it is a frog in its art we get to look at. D is barely passing, and F is a failure or huge missed opportunity. Mabel's Medal just gets a C. Unfortunately, the focus is on Mabel here. We do see two frogs, Helga and Glarb, which we will get to later. However, one of these frogs is about to be Dunzo, and another one of the frogs seems to be the main focus. It seems to really be Helga's Medal here, as Helga seems to be casting this dramatic water spell, but Mabel gets all the credit, and that's really a shame, so we're only giving this one a C. Now we do have to keep moving on because there are a lot of frog cards. If I do any more reviews of sets with frogs in them, they will be much shorter as there's usually only one or two. But here we have Season of the Burrow, which is one of two seasons with a frog in its artwork. Ironically, they're not green and blue, where you primarily find frogs in this set, but they're the white and blue ones. This Season of the Burrow has a fantastic art of a frog in that little leaf formation. Absolutely wonderful, absolutely delightful. Love its expression. Season of the Burrow, the alternate art, has a very terrified, scared frog, which makes me feel very sad. So I gave that one just a little bit lower of a grade at a B-. Season of the Burrow, the normal art, gets a B+ for that incredible art. It is small, but it is absolutely terrific. The ability doesn't care about frogs, unfortunately. However, it does return target permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, which can bring things back like Spore Frog, and even all the way up to a Chub Toad or something. A lot of frogs in Magic's history cost about 3 mana, so this is a good way to exile something an opponent controls and get a frog back. Can be pretty useful in a frog deck. However, you're probably not running white, so you probably don't play this in your frog deck. And that's all the white cards, which brings us to our first main color of frogs in this set. And we're going to start with Bellowing Crier. It's a frog advisor for 2 mana. It just enters and you draw a card, then discard. It's fine with all the blinking shenanigans you're going to do with frogs nowadays. It's okay. It can fill your threshold for the old 2 frog threshold cards, but you probably don't necessarily run this card. It doesn't really have any upside. Maybe you'll run it in limited if you're playing rats or something, but we're not entirely sure if Frogs wants this in Commander, so we just give it a B-. Okay, here we get to an absolutely terrific frog with incredible art. That alt art is just a little bit better, eking out an A over an A- with more focus on a frog, and in fact 2 frogs. Here's the first time we see those lily pad hats. This cares about their new mechanic of blinking in and out, which is great to see in Simic, not just plain boring old ramp. It gives an activated ability to trigger its own triggered ability, and that's just terrific. 2 mana, 1/3, can't really go wrong. This doesn't entirely look like a frog wizard to me, but I'm happy with it, and it's a terrific card that will be a support role in all of your frog decks. It doesn't go above and beyond, but I really think this 2 mana guy will get you 2 or 3 cards if you get this thing out early enough. Alright, here's Into the Flood Maw, which has a frog on it. Otherwise, though, not too froggy. It's an unsummon that can be a little bit better if you give your opponent a fish or one of your other opponents a fish. This will be a neat political piece, but I don't think it sees much play. I just give it a C. It focuses more on that one crab, which I think is only an uncommon or something, than the frog. So it's okay, it's neat, but it's not too froggy here, which leads us to a very froggy card in Long River Lurker. This gets a firm A. All frogs have Ward 1. That is just absolutely incredible. It also gives things unblockable, and I don't know, it just triggers, enters the battlefield. It has Ward. It does everything you want to be doing. It's a 3 mana 2/3. The art isn't the best frog art in the set. It's a little generic and a little washed out, which is why it doesn't get that A+, but overall it is just fantastic. And again, art is subjective, and at uncommon, this is going to be terrific. You might play this in limited. You're definitely going to play this in your frog commander decks as one of the only frog lords out there. Really terrific to see cards caring about frogs that are frogs themselves. Before we just got Grolnok, and now we have a few cards in this set, and that's just terrific to see. Long River's Pull shows a frog being eaten to death. This is very sad, so you can all start crying now. It's okay. I'm still here. get some tissues. You can join us once you're ready to see this frog being brutally ripped apart by this counterspell. I love this card. I think this is a good counterspell. I think it's where we want counterspells to be in Magic the Gathering. Gift is such a cool mechanic, has such cool political implications in Commander. You can counter someone's spell, give someone else a card, and that's just wonderful. You'll play this card in a lot of decks, outside of frogs too, but I think it's very good. It's sad, of course, which is why I don't think it's a B+, and it doesn't technically care about frogs, but we'll be happy to play it and happy to look at that frog while it's still with us. Portent of Calamity, I really wish this card was better. This card has terrific art, especially that normal art. I'm not a huge fan of the alternate art border in this set, unfortunately. I think it can lead to a little bit of over-design with too many lines on the text box and on the border, combined with the art style, is a little too much for me. However, I think that normal art by Sam Gay is just absolutely terrific, with all those dragonflies and Helga there in the middle. It's Story Spotlight. It's cool. It'll get you some card advantage, but I'm not sure if you want to play this card. It's a little slow. It's going to miss a lot of the time, but it can find some important enchantments in your deck, your Kindred Discoveries, your Reflections of Yara, but overall, I'm not sure if Frogs wants this card. Runaway Together is another perfect card. Not only does it do exactly what Frogs wants to do, it also does exactly what Otters wants to do in this set, and they just found an incredible reprint and gave it incredible art. Lebo and Pola there from the flavor text are having a delightful old time sailing off into the sunset. This will bounce your frogs, this will protect you from threats, this will make political deals in Commander. This is just a terrific card, a terrific reprint, a variant on Peel from Reality, and I think a card that so many decks are going to want, and so many decks are going to be a lot happier looking at this little happy frog and this little happy otter running away together. Next, we're looking at our second season. This is the Season of Weaving, and this is an A- or an A, depending on what art you're looking at. The A- comes from the really minimal frog on Season of Weaving's normal art, but that delightful frog wizard who has a wonderful expression on their face in the alt art is terrific. This card is 6 mana and will probably draw you a card and make you two copies of your best frog, which is absolutely delightful. No cons on that. It just 2 copies. They're great. Whatever your best frog is, you're going to get 2 more of them, and you're going to be really happy to play this card in a frog deck, in really any deck. It bounces things. It does what Frogs wants to do. Worst comes to worst, you pay 6 mana to draw 5 cards. That's pretty fantastic. But I think this card has a lot of upsides, and is something you're going to be very happy to see in your hand. Now we move on to Skyskipper Duo. This is our first duo. We have 2 with frogs on them. The first is this bird frog, which means that it has flying. It cares a little bit more about the frog calf, which is really nice for us. Not really nice if someone's doing a bird review, but we're not doing a bird review. That would be for losers. We play frogs, which is going to be, I think, a meta-defining deck for probably the next, 20 years or so. 3/3 with flying. When it enters, you exile up to 1 creature. You return it at the next end step. It's going to trigger enters the battlefield abilities. It is flying. It is 5 mana, which keeps it from being an A. It's good. You'll play this. But if it was just had a little bit better stats or something, it just a little bit misses the mark at 5 whole mana. Splash Lasher has an A-, not only for that name, but also it's a 4 mana 3/3. You tap a creature, you put a stun counter on it. It is Offspring. Now, in a Commander deck, this isn't great, but oftentimes this will win you a game of Limited. You will pay 6 mana, tap down 2 of your opponent's things, and just swing in for lethal. It is going to be absolutely terrific, I think, and a role filler in a lot of decks. Now, Offspring is a really good mechanic if you're trying to do the Peer Pressure combo. Peer Pressure is a card that works really well with frogs. If you have, copies of Omnibian, or you've turned some of your opponent's creatures into frog lizards or turn to frog effects, Peer Pressure can be a fantastic card for you to run. It says if you control more creatures of a certain creature type, you take all of those on the battlefield. So if you control 10 frogs, you turn your opponent's best creatures into frogs, and cast Peer Pressure and take them. It's great, but you do need a lot of frogs to make that work. And for 6 mana, you get 2, and that's pretty cool. Splash Portal is going to be an A for that terrific art and that terrific ability. Worst comes to worst, this is a 1 mana card that draws you a card. It just cycles away because you're probably always going to have a frog in a frog deck if it is your commander or etc. And it also triggers and enters the battlefield effect, which, as we've seen today, a lot of them have. This is Valley Floodcaller, another essentially frog lord. It gives all of your frogs essentially prowess, except it also untaps them. This can make for an epic surprise if someone's trying to swing in at you. It is flash. Your non-creature spells have flash. It is an all-around powerhouse for just 3 mana. However, it's only a B+ because it is an otter, not a frog. It has a frog in the art, of course, cares about frogs, which is fantastic, but it just misses the mark because if that frog was the focus, we would be really happy. But this otter is nice too, and we're glad it's a friend to our frogs. Okay, here we got Waterspout Warden. This is a frog soldier, which I find is a little bit of an odd creature type, especially on Bloomburrow. I don't exactly know why they have soldiers. It's not really like they have a army or anything. You know, we've seen warriors. I would even believe maybe a knight, but soldier is a little bit odd, but that's okay. It attacks and gets flying if another creature entered, which will help with, I guess, a bird deck, but I don't know. It's not terrific. I'm not sure if you want to play this in Commander deck. You'll want to play this in Limited every time, probably. It's a 3 mana 3/2 that almost guaranteed his flying until the late game. This is a first appearance of one of those cool weapons that kind of has water in the handle, which is really cool, but other cards do it better. This is just a B-. Okay, Wishing Well is a D, unfortunately. This is your classic rare that someone designed that didn't really go in any set that they just kind of threw in here. No hate on the designer. It's a really cool card if you want it. If you can proliferate or manipulate the coin counters to get exactly what card you want, it's cool. But it's for a graveyard deck, a non-creature, or instant sorcery deck even. It's 4 mana and it's really, really slow. You can cast this on turn 4 and maybe not get anything out of it for a few turns. I don't think frogs want this. I don't think most decks want this. But maybe if you happen to be the right deck, you could play it. It's only a D or a D+ because we do see a little bit more of that second frog in the alternate art. But yeah, it's nothing that's really doing anything for me right now, unfortunately. Alright, and that is enough of the blue cards. Moving on to the black cards, just a few here. We got Dire Sight, another look at King Glarb here, having stolen the egg in response to what he sees as the doom of all of Bloomburrow. In Surveils 2, he draws 2 cards, you lose 2 life. This is a good card, a lot of decks are going to want to play this. Unfortunately, a sorcery. You think it could have been an instant, but it's okay. It's pretty good. You might want to play this in graveyard decks or if you're looking to threshold, but not a lot of black frog decks, and that's okay. We're just going to give this a B-. Alright, that was all the black cards. Yeah, just one. Don't worry, we have a multicolored one later. First, we got Clifftop Lookout for our green cards here. This is 3 mana for a 1/2 with a reach. That's cool. And when it enters, you get a land from the top. You kind of exile until you hit a land, which is just fantastic. It is kind of a Wood Elves on a frog with reach. So, you know, for just that, that's pretty cool. It doesn't necessarily just search for a basic or just a forest. You can find any land. It does enter tapped, but that's totally okay, I think. It is a, 3 mana frog that ramps. You're going to play this a lot of the time. You're going to blink this a lot of the time, and this thing can get 2 or 3 lands. It's not the best effect like this we've had, but I think it's really playable, and I think you'll play it a lot of time in Limited. You'll play it a lot of time in Commander, especially if you care about those creature types. And this is Mist Breath Elder. This is a little bit of an underwhelming card. Cool art on both of these effects. I don't like the main frog on the normal art, but the kind of ghost frog hallucinations are really cool. Water frogs, I don't know exactly what they are, but you don't need to. They're really cool. I guess they're mist. Wow, that would probably be what they are, right? Mist breath. And the alternate art is a rare version of this alternate art that I really like. I like the focus on that frog. I like how the border is simplified, or not the border is simplified, but the area kind of around the main frog is simplified. And it's cool that this frog is a trident. However, a 1-mana 2/2 is great, but this effect is kind of hit or miss. I think there are boards in which this will really ruin your day. If you can only really get 2 or 3 frogs down, and they don't have good enters abilities, you're just going to be a little sad that you're just going to be left with this piddly, 2/2, 3/3, whatever it is. And you have to bounce your creatures every turn and recast them every turn. Sometimes you're going to be really happy about this. Other times, this is going to sit in your hand and wait for an opportunity to come down and get you a bit of value, but I don't think it's too great. However, where you are is temporary. What you do is forever is a terrific line of flavor text, and I wish we saw flavor text on the normal version of this card, which only gives the normal version of this card a B+, and upgrades the alt art all the way to an A. Alright, Overprotect is a B+ as well. 2 mana to give a creature essentially a giant growth plus trample, hexproof, and indestructible. From Blore the Impervious, whose defenses are impervious. Terrific flavor text, terrific art of Blore. However, I don't know. If this thing was 1 mana, maybe didn't give the +3/+3. It's neat, it's cool, it'll get someone limited. I don't know if you play this in Commander because it doesn't get the card advantage. It doesn't exactly do everything that you want. It'll protect someone, but at what cost? You can hold up 1 mana pretty easy. 2 mana is a little bit harder. It's almost worth it for that art. You'll probably want to play this. I'm giving it a B+, but I think I'm being a little lenient because that flavor text is terrific. Polywog, on the other hand, is a solid removal spell. It's 4 mana, but this spell costs 1 less to cast for each frog you control. Now, when I first read this, I think I read it as if you control a frog, it costs 1 less, which was bad. It was 3 mana for this effect, which is essentially a double bite. However, this will oftentimes cost 1 mana. In situations where you need to cast it, it'll cost 1 mana, and a 1 mana removal spell in green, it cares about frogs, it has this incredible art, this really funny flavor text. I mean, it's just terrific. There's a few cards in this set that depict this one frog fighting this one crab, and I don't know, it's awesome. This is, a terrific little story that these cards tell, a funny art, a good effect, a surprising effect. This is an instant. This is everything we wanted to see. It's at common. This gets an A+. This is one of the best cards from the set for frogs. Unironically, I don't see a world in which this costs more than 1 mana and just kills something for no downside. This is, on the right board, up there with the best removal spells, only if you're playing frogs. And those are some of my favorite cards to see. Cards that care about a niche specific archetype that can use the help getting a pretty strong removal spell is pretty great. I'd rather see that over any normal deck getting a 1 mana removal spell. Here we got Sticky Tongue Sentinel, which is good, but after what we just saw, hard to compare. This is an A. It will enter and will return another permanent you control to its owner's hand. It's 3/3 with reach. Sometimes that can be a downside, as we previously saw, but I think a lot of the time it'll just be good. It is cool art with that weird spirally tongue, looking a bit like a Pokemon, but it's okay. And that awesome sword. I love how these swords have a little bit of water in them. It's a little unclear how they would work practically and how they would hold in your hand and feel, but I think it really works for the world of Bloomburrow, and I think it's a really terrific design choice to take these frogs in. I think this frog is a little bit burlier than some of the blue frogs, and I don't know, it just seems like it's a good role filler. You'll play this in a lot of decks, even outside of Limited, I think. Sun Shower Druid is next, another frog that I think you'll play outside of your Limited decks too, maybe. It's a 1 mana 1/3 essentially, but it can put a counter on something else. This, I think, is what you want for a lot of those frogs that bounce frogs repeatedly back to your hand. It's just 1 mana, so it's not that much to get it back out onto the battlefield. The life gain we don't care about. Frogs don't care about life gain. There's no frogs that have before. It's neat, but it's more of a bat effect. It's in white and black in this set, so I'm not sure why this gains a life, but that's okay. 1 mana, 1/3 that gains you a life is just good. You'll play it in draft, I'm sure. You might even play it in Commander, though I'm not sure. It is pretty specific, but this is terrific art, and I kind of like this guy a lot. So it gets a solid A. Another solid A is 3 Tree Scribe. Now this is definitely a moment from the first episode of Burrvale, which you can watch right now on Ends Well Tales. When it or another creature leaves the battlefield without dying, which I really like that line of text. It shows up on another frog too, we'll see. You get a counter on any creature you control. It's a 2 mana, 2/3. Solid already. That gives your guys buffs for doing what Frogs wants to be doing. I don't know. This is a terrific card with terrific art. I like that it ties in, all of what Frogs wants to be doing in this little uncommon. I like that art. I like that it's croaking or something, but very peaceful and serene. This is a solid card. I think it's an A. I don't think it's anything special, but I think you'll definitely want to play this card. Our second duo, we have a duo of duos, apparently. This is Treeguard Duo, which is a frog rabbit. Again, cares a little bit more about frogs, but does care about the rabbit mechanic of kind of going wide. It's a 4 mana 3/4. It'll give a creature +X equals the number of creatures you control, and vigilance until end of turn. Good with bouncing. However, I don't know, that art doesn't really do it for me. They're kind of generic and they look a little plasticky, but it's okay. Generic flavor text, a fine card. This will blow someone out limited, especially if you give it to one of your trample creatures. But I think it's just an A-. I'm not sure if you play this in Commander. I'm going to try it out. But I think it really cares about a board state. And I think 4 mana for an effect you want to blank over and over again is a little bit much. Okay, this is a card that you might want to give that bonus to. Trample for a Valley Mistcaller. A 1 mana 1/1. Whenever another frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel enters, you get a counter on it. This is terrific. This is similar to that other card that cared about the creature type batching we saw before in blue, but it is a frog, so that's great. This is an A+. The art on the normal version of this card is, I think, my favorite art in the set. It is really inspiring to me. I don't know, it kind of conjures up a story all of its own. It's kind of chopping away at this rot that is overtaking the forest as these other woodland creatures look on. It's a 1 mana 1/1 with trample that gets bigger as the game goes on. Rewards you for doing what frogs already want to do. I don't know, it's terrific. There is no path to the root maze's center, Bard. Sing a song while I create one. Absolutely awesome flavor text. Probably my favorite card in the set. Other maybe than Polywog. And then we have the alternate art, which, I don't know, man. This alternate art is not my favorite. I like, I guess, the design of that rabbit in the back, but this frog is all grumbly and weird and kind of, I don't know. Valley Mightcaller, the generic version, you could share a drink with a guy, he would talk to you, he'd be a nice guy, he'd kind of, talk up his own accomplishments, but he'd be fun, he'd be a fun guy, you'd want to hang out with, you'd want to be friends with him. And then Valley Mightcaller, the alternate art, it looks like he's gonna turn in front of you without using his blinker, he's fine, it's okay, but I really don't think you beat that normal art. Sorry, no offense to Justine. I just think Matt Stewart takes the cake with this one. Now we move on to our first multicolored card and our first legend of the set. We have 3 frog legends, which is just incredible after having, one a year for a really long time. Here we get Clement the Worrywart, our second frog commander that cares about frogs. This is cheaper than Grolnok. This is, I think, a lot better than Grolnok and does a lot of what frogs want to be doing in this set. It is Vigilance. It's a 3/3. Gives frogs the ability to tap for mana, including itself. This frog, you can also tap Clement to tap for mana, which is great. And also bounces creatures when you need it. I like that it says up to 1. A lot of the bounce effects we've seen frogs have in this set, you have to bounce something. I like that this gives you a choice, and you also have 3 different arts to choose from, which is just terrific. I gave the base art, and the alternate art A's, but that raised foil art is just an A+. I'm gonna run that. Hopefully it's not too expensive. Darn capitalism. But I don't know, just to have the 3 versions of this card is cool. I love that it's a frog druid. It's very much my character from Burrvale, and I'm very excited to play with this card. It's just, I don't know, terrific. Does everything you want frogs to do. Has a great character design. I like that it's a worrywart. It's terrific. The 10 out of 10 card. Yeah, it's a 3-mana 3/3 with a lot of upside. Cares about frogs. Has many different arts to choose from. Yeah, terrific lad. Definitely my frog commander, probably your frog commander too. Yes, it's only 2 colors, but I think, I don't know, you can't ask for too much. It's only a rare. It's great. I could go on about this card all day long, but we have a few other worse frog commanders to talk about. And also first, Dream to Entrancer, another A+ card. Both of these arts. It is 4 mana for 3/4 with reach. Terrific. When it enters, you either tap down one of your opponent's creatures or one of your creatures. And if you tap down one of your creatures, you draw 2 cards. Now you get stun counters on it, which could be bad, but you'll have the upside of tapping down someone else's creatures and putting stun counters on it. And also, you know, if you tap down one of your creatures, you draw 2 cards, and then you can just blink it. This card's terrific. It does everything frogs want to do. It's probably a repeatable draw. If you put this in your Clement deck, you're going to be just bouncing this thing and other things back and forth back to your hand, profiting off those draw triggers. I think this might not be perfect in a limited matchup, but then again, you know, just tapping down a creature with 3 stun counters takes it out for a really long time. If you can bounce this once or twice, you know, can take over that game. I think this is a stellar card, and I really think you're going to want to play this in a lot of decks. Probably not all frog decks, but if you're playing Clement specifically, and specifically a lot of the Bloomburrow frogs, you're going to want this. That brings us to Glarb. Now, I wish I liked Glarb more. Glarb was the first frog commander we saw from this set, but I'm only giving it a B+ in its normal art. I love that art. I like how it's smarmy. He looks sitting on his chair, really basking in the destruction that he is causing, that he thinks he's preventing. The other art only gets a B- for me. I like that he's getting out of his chair. He's attacking. He's on the offensive. But his face and his overall demeanor, I don't think really fits with how he's characterized in other arts and other pieces of the story. However, it's still cool and isn't that, you know, I'm still giving it a B-. It's 3 mana for a 2/4 with Death Touch. Great. And you can cast spells on the top of your library and Surveil. However, as we've seen with this set and most other sets, frogs are 3 mana or less. Yes, this does give you 3 colors to play frogs. You can play Yargle, you can play Yargle Multani, you can play Gitrog in this deck. However, I don't know. I don't think this is your frog commander. It doesn't say frogs anywhere on it. Yes, it'll help you get a little bit of card advantage. It's a Frog Wizard Noble, which is great, but I don't know. I don't think this is terrific. I think it's really great. I think you'll want it in a graveyard deck. I don't think you want it as the leader of your frogs, though. Great card, cool character, but is only getting a B here. Maybe I could bump that up higher, but it doesn't really care about what frogs want to be doing. It is good, but I don't think it understands the assignment. All right, Helga's another one that just gets a B. Terrific art on both of these, I want to say. Terrific art in the set as a whole. I can never do any of these. What these people do, absolutely wonderful. David Peterson did this art for Helga Skittish Seer. That's incredible. Now, it is a 3 mana 1/3. It gets bigger when you cast big spells. You gain some life. You can add some mana. Again, caring about mana value 4 greater is really weird to me. We see raccoons have expend 4 in the set, but the 2 3 mana frog characters that kind of take up a lot of the story here, both mythics, also care about mana value 4 or greater. This is very weird to me. Maybe at one point that was the frog mechanic, but they specifically care about casting spells, which is not what you're doing a lot of the time. A lot of the time you're just blinking the frogs, and they're not mana value 4 or greater anyway. So I don't entirely get what's going on here. It doesn't relate to frogs. It doesn't really relate to what you want to be doing in Limited. Yeah, you probably play these in Limited anyway because they're just bombs and they add mana or something. But I don't think these are terrific. I was a little underwhelmed by these two, and I really wanted to like them, but they're just a little too generic to me, and didn't really stand out as something that I want to play or am interested in running. Here's a card I am interested in running. 4 mana for a 4/4 reach. Now this does cost 4 mana, I guess. With an activated ability, pay 3 to blink a creature and put a counter on it. Unfortunately, it's only a sorcery, and it is repeatable, but it is 3 mana, which is a lot. However, that flavor text, that art, and the fact that it's just a 4 mana 4/4 reach is kind of terrific. You can get your enters the battlefield triggers over and over again if you have nothing else to do. Towards the late game, this is going to be an absolute all-star, whether you're in Limited, whether you're in Commander. You're going to play the heck out of this card, and you're going to be activating that ability a lot, I think. I wish that it cost a little less or, wasn't at sorcery speed, maybe at the sake of not entering with a counter or something. It's cool, but, 7 mana to get its effect is a lot. Maybe if it triggered one time when it entered or something, I don't know. It's good. It's a 4 mana 4/4 reach. It's going to be incredible in Limited. Maybe a little underwhelming sometimes in Commander, but you're going to play it when you can. And here we got a 2 hybrid cost Pawned Prophet. When it enters, you draw a card. Solid guy. Just a better version of that Bellower card that we saw early on in blue, which is kind of interesting. It just draws cards. You don't discard, which could be an advantage for some decks, I guess. Kind of cool art. I don't know. You want this card a lot of the time. You'll probably play it in Commander, but I don't think it's Excelsior. It's only a 1/1. It's fine. It'll be a B+ for us. Bark Form Harvester and 3 Tree Mascot, and boy, I am disappointed by these cards. Yes, we needed Changelings to support the Kindred archetypes in the set. It's cool to have these effects that are always unlimited creatures that can go in any deck. There'll be role fillers. You'll maybe play the 3 mana one, but these are just disappointments. Their art is cool. I love the 3 Tree Mascot art, but both of these look like squirrels more than anything else. They don't look like Changelings, and that's really disappointing to me. They don't look like they could become any of the creature types represented. I wish that maybe one of them was a squirrel, one of them was something else, or, they had the head of a squirrel. Then they're kind of going for that on 3 Tree Mascot with kind of a bird beak or something, but no frogs in sight, really. I like the world building, I guess, in the flavor text. I'm trying to give these cards anything. They're needed, but I think they just missed the mark a little bit. You'll never play these in a frog deck in Commander. Maybe you'll play these in Limited, but I think these are a bit disappointing. I'm giving them both Ds. I hate to do that. I like the art, I like the idea, but I don't think these work. Alright, another card that I don't think entirely works is Fountain Port Bell. Talk to me in 3 weeks when this card takes off in Commander or something, but it's 1 mana. It enters, you find the land, and you can sacrifice it to draw that land. I wish this got the land in. It would be probably too good if it got the land in your hand. Yeah, I know. But it's 2 mana for this effect. You're playing green anyway. If you want a 2 mana, get a land, just play Rampant Growth or something. If you want, you can just get that frog from earlier. The frog art is cool. This is, a frog mana rock, kind of, which is neat. But, we already have that Commander Sphere from Secret Lair a while ago, by the way. But, I don't know. This is really cool art, which I think brings it to a C, but I don't think you play this card. It's underwhelming. 2 mana for this effect isn't great. Maybe if it did something else, but I don't know. I think this is just slightly underwhelming. I don't think you're going to need this in draft unless you're going 3 colors. I don't think you're going to play this ever in Commander. It's a budget card, I guess, but even then, I don't think it's terrific. Alright, then we got Lilypad and Oak Hollow Villages. These are terrific cards. You'll play them in place of a forest and an island in your decks. Either it surveils 2 or gets a counter on each frog that entered the battlefield this turn. The green one is especially good, but I don't think the blue one is much worse. It will trigger your threshold cards. It, will find you the cards you need in any given situation. You're going to want both these cards. I don't think there's too much of a drawback to playing them. You can still cast your creatures and, your non-creature spells. I hopefully shouldn't be too pip intensive. You're going to want both these cards. They're kind of a free roll. They're both A's. Alright, now we got the lands. The only lands with frogs on them are the islands. Unfortunately, we don't have any frog forests. So, you'll see these in a frog deck, but unfortunately, you'll probably see other generic forests. That's okay. We can't have everything, but we wish we could. I gave these an A, an A, an A+, and an A respectively. I really like that fall art. Not only is it my favorite season, I also think it has a lot of cool details. I love the lotuses that have kind of fallen now. The footprints. I think this is kind of everything you want for your Kindred decks. It's a little weird that the frog in the winter one has a bunch of snow on it. I think that's really funny, but it doesn't make much sense. Was this frog just actually standing here for a whole year? Maybe. That's pretty funny. I'm going to be looking for those fall ones. It's too bad that the winter and fall ones are a bit rarer than the other two, rather. But that's okay. We'll do whatever Wizards wants us to until they fix their game, make it more affordable, and etc. But we'll be happy for these alternate arts, certainly. Alright, and that takes us to the Commander product we're going to be reviewing here. The first card with a frog on it from the Commander deck is our class. There are 2 classes with frogs on it, none from the main set, but a few from this Commander product. It's Fortune Teller's Talent. It lets you look at the top, and then if you spend more mana, you can play spells, and they'll be cheaper to cast from the top. I think this is fine. I don't think you super want this. Maybe in a Glarb deck, just for a repeatable effect. But, I don't know, 1 mana for this effect isn't great. And then I think the rest of the cards just... Yep, I mean, at one point, you're going to put 8 mana into this thing, and then before you can use it, someone's just going to blow it up, and you'll be a little sad. It doesn't really help you cast frogs. It doesn't do what you want to be doing. That frog art is great, so it's going to get a B-, but I think that's a poor start for the Commander product. But I think it gets a lot better with Polywog Prodigy, as well as the next card. This is Evolve, which is from my first ever set, Gatecrash. Very cool. I think a very flavorful mechanic to give frogs. Kind of changing from a, tadpole into a frog is a neat kind of idea. And, of course, frogs and Simic go hand in hand. These are both A+ from me. You'll draw tons of cards, and this card is 2 mana. That's wild to me. If this card came out a few years ago, I think it could be 3. I would play this card at 4 mana. I think 2 mana is great. In games where you get this down on turn 2, you are going to be the threat, and that is very cool to say on a frog. This will draw you tons of cards. I think this card is a card I see in future years being one that people really beg for a reprint. It's good in counters decks. It's good if you want to draw cards. It's good just kind of generically. I don't know. I don't see a world in which you don't want this in tons of decks, even outside of Frog Kindred. So, yeah, A+ for sure. 20-Toed Toad is another card that I absolutely, take such delight in. Really scary hordes of tadpoles. This is clearly maybe the frog from The Mandalorian, but that's awesome because that's, she's a terrific character. Steve Prescott art, maximum hand size of 20. You get counters, you draw cards, and then you can win the game on a 4-mana frog. I think this won't pan out, as much as the previous, as that Polywog will, but I think this is still great. It's an A+. You're going to want this. It's going to be very unassuming, and then all of a sudden you will attack and win. It will draw you cards. Even if you don't win, it just draws you cards. It replaces itself. This card doesn't super synergize with what frogs want to do in the set, but it's just a good frog threat, and I think something you'll really want, and also has a terrific name. Communal Brewing, on the other hand, has a terrific frog in its art, but I don't think is what you want to be doing in a frog deck. Yes, they'll enter with 3 counters, but I think what people are missing is it says target opponents, draw cards. It doesn't let you draw a card. If this replaced itself, oh, that would be awesome. I don't think it would have been too much to ask, if it did that. If it said any number of target players each draw a card, and then you get counters for each creature that way, maybe it could cost one more mana at that point because you're giving, all your guys 4 counters. But, I mean, you're going to be totally outclassed. You're giving them 3 cards if you're playing this in a commander deck, and then they're just going to remove it, and you'll get no benefit from it. I think this is a B-. I love that art. I think it's very cute. I think this is going to be a card you'll be very sad to play. You're going to take your turn 4 to give your opponent's cards, and then you're going to get no value out of it. It's going to get blown up, or, even you're taking your turn 4 off to play no creatures. You need to play creatures on turn 4. If you're playing a Clement deck, you're going to play Clement on turn 3, and then, or hopefully turn 1, or turn 2 rather. You're going to play Clement turn 3, and then probably 2 frogs on turn 4, and this is just going to miss the mark, I think, every time. Rootcast Apprenticeship also gets a B. I don't know. It's okay. It's kind of a confluence. It'll make token copies if you have token copies of frogs, but I don't think is what frogs want to do. Worst comes to worst, it's 4 mana, target opponent sacrifices 3 non-token artifacts, but it's too bad that it says target. I love that frog with Welder's classes. That's great. It's just kind of looking at that little egg thing. It's great art, which brings it to a B, but I don't think you really want this. I wish, this makes 1/1 squirrels. We previously saw that season, which makes 1/1 bunnies. Why not frogs? Frog tokens, It's too bad, but it's okay. We'll recover. I don't think we need this card, but it has a nice frog on it, and it's in the game, so we'll give it a B. Thickest in the Thicket is a funny name for a strange card with technically a frog on it. In the base art, it gets kind of its eye cut off, but in the normal art, we can see the whole thing. I don't think you want this in a frog deck, really. Frogs kind of care about counters, so maybe you'll play it, but I don't know. It's fine. You'll play it if you're a counters deck, I guess. It's 5 mana and will probably replace itself and has a neat effect. I think it's a little underwhelming for 5 mana. Their +1/+1 counters decks have so many options, and I don't know if you want this in your card draw slot. Alright, Fisher's Talent is a card you might want in your card draw slot if you're a tokens deck. However, I don't think frogs want this. It draws cards. That's cool. And then if you would make certain tokens, it turns them into 8/8s, which you might if you hit a land off the top. It's neat for 4 mana. You'll draw a card. It's maybe a better Phyrexian Arena or something, but it has the same problems as Phyrexian Arena too. You have to wait a whole turn cycle before you get any value off of it. It's the same thing. You're taking your turn 4 off to get some cards, which is okay, but I think you want to play frogs that get you cards rather than look at this frog. Terrific art, gets a B, but I don't think it's everything you want to be doing. Alright, here's, there's 2 random cards in the commander decks that care about 8/8 octopi. That's fine. You gift someone an octopus, and then you get a copy of it. If you're making a lot of tokens, I guess you want this deck. But, if your meta has a lot of tokens, it'll probably get you treasures because so many people run treasures. But, I don't know. You're giving someone a whole octopus, probably. If you can use that as an ally, that's good. But I think, 5 mana for a 3/3 frog druid, which makes octopus and probably some treasures, is fine. I'm giving it a C+. It kind of misses the mark. I wish this was a bit better, or maybe a little bit more of an upside for giving a gift. Maybe if it triggered twice if you gave a gift or something. Because, if you're running this card, you're going to have other effects that can trigger it. I don't think this is great. I really wish it was, but I don't think it is. Alright, this brings us to our kind of alternate arts. This is one of the first cards we saw in the set and gave me a lot of hope about what we'd be seeing. It gave frogs kind of a new identity here. They're kind of they have these like shields and stuff. It's really cool. The alternate art is awesome. I love it. However, it's way less frogs. We can still see some in the back. There's definitely that one we can definitely see. And I love how they're so impressed by Jace. They're like, these frogs just found out about World Wake. And good for them, quite frankly. Cool set, World Wake. But, I don't know. Jace was really good 10 years ago. It's still playable now. You'll be happy if you open it, but I don't know. It's fine. It's an A definitely, or B plus. You'll be happy when you open this card. It can kind of synergize with what Frogs wants to do because it returns creatures to your hand. Most of the time, you'll just draw cards. I don't think this sees much commander play. We'll see commander play in the decks that already did. I don't think it goes in Frogs. I think it's cool. I wish Jace was a frog, but we'll take what we can get. But Nissa as a frog, A plus all around. We got 2 different kind of versions of Nissa, which is cool. We got like the cool anime like slenderized version, and then also this really kind of awkward Nissa with the full art. I guess they're both full art here, but the base art. I'm giving both of these A pluses. You'll want these cards. This is great in Commander. It'll just ramp you. It can protect itself. You get counters on your lands, and they kind of become these threats and blockers. You can search your library for some forests, which does not take many turns to get to. It comes down at 5 mana. Even if it was just, you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green, that's good. You'll play that in a frog deck. You'll play that in most decks. It's just generically good. It's one of my favorite planeswalkers, and to see it get these frog treatments is terrific. We'll see how expensive those Imagine Critters kind of Japanese anime variants are, but you'll want this in a lot of decks. In Frogs, outside of Frogs. Nissa is one of my favorite planeswalkers, and I'm so glad that they did my girl good like this. Alright, Gitrog monster. Imagine if this critter was a critter. It's fine. I really wish that they did a different take on the Gitrog monster. This is really good Gitrog art, but it looks like the Gitrog always does. If this was like the Gitrog turned into more of a humanoid frog, I think that would be highly entertaining. Here it's kind of Calamity Beast-ified, but I don't think that really works for me. I like that it's giant, even though it's on Bloomburrow, but I think that it would be way funnier and way cooler if imagine the Gitrog goes through an omen path and all of a sudden can talk. What would the Gitrog say? That would be delightful. And I mean, it's a good card. You know what the Gitrog does. It's a 5 and a 6 with Death Touch and all these additional effects. It's a really good card. You'll play it if you want it. It's an A for sure, but it's in black, which you don't want necessarily as a frog deck. Maybe you do. Maybe you're playing Glarb. I think it's good. I don't think you want this in every deck, and it would have been an A plus. They just, I think, could have been a little bit more creative with their art direction here. Speaking of creative art direction, this is terrific. This is what I mean by that. I could picture this in the other alternate border, and I don't think it would have the same effect on me. But this border is great. Flubs the Fool has just terrific art style. I like that it's kind of wandering and alludes to a bigger world outside of Bloomburrow in Valley. He knows exactly where he's going and exactly how he isn't going to get there. A 3-mana 0/5 with this crazy effect. It's really good. It's wild. If you sit down across from this at Commander Night, you're going to be very scared. It doesn't really synergize with what Frogs wants to do, but I could still see people playing this as their commander if they want some red effects that could synergize with Frogs, maybe some kindred effects. But I don't know. It's good. It's an A, but I wish I cared about Frogs a little bit more. It's just an A. Rapid Hybridization. I really think this card is a bit disappointing too. This is the only card in the set that earned an F, in fact. Yeah, that might be tough, but just hear me out for a second. This is a premium removal spell. It's great. It's a reprint, and I really think they did a letdown on the art and flavor here. There's some cool tadpoles that are kind of absorbing this lizard or something, but they're not turning this lizard into a frog that much. It just looks like this lizard is falling into some tadpoles, and that's really disappointing. They could have had a really cool kind of hybrid card where it's this lizard frog thing. There's kind of funny art like that in the set. There's that Rabid Bite card or something. I don't exactly remember what it's called. Rabid Gnaw, maybe. It's that card that shows that mouse with those giant teeth. And here, I don't know, they could have done something more with this lizard turning into a frog, this kind of rapid hybridization. we already kind of had this like freaky art with the Simic original printing in Gatecrash, and I like it. I love this card, but it's just disappointing to me. It's really cool, but we got the same Frog Lizard token as before. I already have 8 copies of it. It's cool, but I don't know. I feel like this was a huge missed opportunity in a set with both frogs and lizards. This card kind of fails on that front to me. It needs way more than the lizard half, and it's just kind of a lizard falling. I'm giving this card an F. It doesn't feel like they tried. They commissioned this huge new piece of artwork. Why couldn't they have, dug a little deeper and thought really about how this could look on the world of Bloomburrow? All right, here we got a better reprint. Only one little teeny frog in the art, kind of to the bottom right of everything. But it's Beastmaster Ascension. That's a good card. It shows this scary Wolverine bee thing from the main set. It's neat. I'm giving it a B-. It understands the assignment, but it just makes it onto this list on a technicality that it has a frog in the bottom of its art. I guess if you want to run Beastmaster Ascension in a frog deck, you could, and this is probably the version you run, but I don't think you run it. It doesn't shine there. It's fine, but I don't think it's brilliant. Alright, Harmonize. This card is brilliant. This is a solid A. You don't need to know the words to sing along, draw 3 cards. Simple text. Those 3 singing frogs are just delightful. I especially love the one with kind of the loot thing on the bottom. And I think this is the version of Harmonize that I'm going to start running in every deck that runs Harmonize. 4-mana, draw 3. Sure, don't mind if I do. A solid reprint and terrific art. I hope they use this one going forward, and I certainly will be. Rites of Flourishing, also, it's a card that understands the assignment, and I think it doesn't hit it. I like that it got new art. I like that it has these frogs on it, but it's just a B. I don't think you run this in frog decks. I like the flavor decks, I guess, but it's not brilliant. I like that. It cares about togetherness. That's very Bloomburrow to me. That's very frogs to me. But it doesn't necessarily care about what frogs care about. Spore Frog reprint, A-, solid. It's too bad they used the Modern Horizons flavor text. I like the original flavor text more, but I like that they used the original art. It would have been cool to see a Bloomburrow take on this art, so I'm only giving this an A-, but I'm glad that it's here. I'm glad that they went out of their way to reprint one of the best frogs in the game. Art still holds up. It's terrific. And all right, we got 2 more cards here, the special guest cards, and then we'll talk about the set as a whole really quick. Thanks for sticking with me all the way through this video. You guys are the best. I hope you're having a terrific day, and I hope that I made your day a little bit brighter by talking about these silly frogs here. Speaking of silly frogs, we kind of got this, cool looking frog on this Sylvan Tutor art with this raccoon friend. I love this art. Yeah, it kind of has an unconventional frog weapon for the set, but I think it really works. I love this art style. If this was like the art style of a whole range of, the alternate art for a set, I would be so down. I love the colors on it. Yeah, great card. Cool reprint. Glad to have it here. Glad it has a frog on it. Which leads us to our last reprint. Oh, yeah, I forgot to say the grip for that one. This one's also an A, though. And, yeah, it's Frogmite. It's cool. I like the flavor text. I like the adaptation to this world that they did on the flavor text. I think it really works. I like that an Otter-folk made it. They care about non-creatures. That kind of works with the artifacts. And, I don't know. I don't think you'll run this in many frog decks. I might have to take it out of my Lonus deck because I'm making way less clues. However, it's good. It's a frog. You'll be happy to see this every time. It's really cool art, and it'll just be a nice collector's piece to have. It's a classic. It's a blast from the past. I'm glad it gets a reprint here. If they reprint Spore Frog in the Commander decks, I'm glad this one also made it into the set. I think those are 2 really important frogs to have. This gets a solid A. Giving the overall set as well an A. Some would debate that it should get an A+. I think there's a few misses, and the misses are just enough not to bump it up. But, we have, 50-some frog cards that are new from this set. There's 24 frog creatures or so in the set, And out of the 60 frog creatures that we've had previously, that, it's just an overwhelming majority of them. This is going to be an upgrade to my frog deck, to your frog deck, frog decks across the world, perhaps across the universe. This set is bananas. It's not only terrific, it not only has terrific art and terrific flavor, it's just really inspired. They took their time with this one, and it shows that a lot of passion went into it. I think this will be talked about in the same breaths as the new Kamigawa set, as, someone's favorite modern Magic set. I think this is up there for me. My favorite sets are probably Khans of Tarkir block, and I think that new Kamigawa set, Return to Ravnica, and I think this will equally get up there. There's so many inspired designs. I put the best cards here as Polywog Prodigy, 20-Toed Toad, Valiant Might Caller, Polywallop, Clement the Worrywart, and Nissa Who Shakes the World coming in with that reprint. I think these 6 are going to find homes in decks all across the Frog sphere, whether it be Frog Commander decks, whether it be other decks, really just counters decks. If you want to draw cards, sure. If you want to ramp, sure. It's a good card. It's a good set. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks, Wizards, for printing Bloomburrow. I like when they print these sets that don't care about, archetypes we've seen before, but care about new archetypes. I think that they spawn in decks. We have so many legends nowadays that it's really refreshing to see when a legend comes along and does something new, and I really think this does. We see Simic not just ramping, but doing creative things now, and that's great. I hope it continues forward. Duskmourn probably won't have any frogs in it, but if it does, I'll do a frog review. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you want to see frog reviews of other older sets, leave a comment in the comments below, and I'll get around to it. Thank you so much for watching. If you've stuck with me all this way, I had a lot of fun doing this set review. I made this for my 3 friends who I want to talk about frogs to. But if you also care about frogs enough to watch this, you're terrific. Have a fantastic day. I hope everything is wonderful in your life. And thanks for making my life a little bit more wonderful too. Thank you to Wizards, and thank you to these absolutely glorious frogs. Peace out, and see you later. Keep it right here on Fasciano Productions. Thanks for watching.